Many of my students cracked the interviews and got the jobs. And I believe you can also do the same. Hello friends, Angular has the most jobs for front-end developers in big enterprise level companies because there the projects are big and complex and Angular can fix it. So if you are interested in big MNCs, then Angular is a right choice for you. Now to get those jobs and for cracking the interviews, today I am going to cover the top 10 Angular interview questions for candidates having experience 1 to 2 years. Okay, you can also treat this video as a mock interview for your practice. Just listen to the question, pause the video, think about your own answer and then listen to my answer. Okay. Hey, my name is Happy and I help candidates in cracking Angular interviews by posting Angular careers, jobs, and interview guidance related videos. If you don't want to miss those latest videos on Angular, then hit the like and subscribe button. Now let's start with the first question. What is a bootstrap component and bootstrapping module? When the Angular web application will start, then the first module launched is the bootstrapped module. And the same is true for bootstrapped component also. Let me show you in the code. When Angular web application will start, then first the single page index.html will be loaded. And this will load main.ts file. And then this will bootstrap the app module. See the bootstrap module function here. See, this app module is the bootstrapping module. We can replace it with any other module. Now what is bootstrapped component? Let's go to the definition of this app module. Here you can see inside a module there can be many components declared like this. Out of these components we can see which will run first. We can set which will run first. That component name we will put here in front of bootstrap property. So now this app component is the bootstrap component. We can also add multiple component in bootstrap property. For example, if I add header component here, then both of these component together will be bootstrap component. This is the story of bootstrap module and component. If you have any queries about this question, then I will be very happy to answer it as my name is Happy. What is string interpolation in Angular? Let's check out the theory first. This is the flow of data in case of string interpolation. Data will go from component to view. So the definition of string interpolation is a one-way binding technique that is used to transfer the data from a TypeScript code or component to an HTML template, or we can call it view. Now there are two important things about interpolation. First is string interpolation can work only with string type, not with numbers, not with booleans, or not with any other type. And the second important thing is it is represented inside this double curly braces. Now let me show you the same thing in the code for the string interpolation. Suppose we have this title field in component file and the value is set to first interview. Now we have to transfer this value to view or HTML template file from this component file. So how we can do this? The answer is simple with the help of string interpolation like this. Put title inside the double curly braces inside the HTML view. See, now I will check the view in browser and it is present here. That means data is transferred from TypeScript or component code to HTML view. That is short answer of string interpolation data binding technique. Second data binding technique is property binding, which is like a big brother of string interpolation. Let's see that in upcoming question. If you have any queries about this question, so please ask me in the comment section and I will be very happy to answer it. Alright, friends, before we hit the next question, if you have not yet accepted my never give up challenge, then accept it. Make a promise and commitment to yourself, no matter how tough it gets, no matter how many rejections you will face, but you will never give up until you crack the interview. That is also my own struggle story with interviews. Accept this challenge by writing never give up in the comment section right now. Trust me, the moment you write it, you will feel an instant boost of confidence and motivation towards your goal. What is property binding in Angular? This is 90% similar to string interpolation. See, this is the flow of data in case of property binding. Data will flow from component to view same as string interpolation. The definition of property binding is like TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript. Similarly, property binding is also a superset of interpolation. It can do whatever interpolation can do. In addition, it can set an element property to a non-string data value like Boolean. So string interpolation can only play with strings, but property binding can play with any data type. So this is the difference between string interpolation and property binding also. Now the question is why we need string interpolation. When property binding can do all the things which interpolation can do, then what is the need of interpolation? The answer is because string interpolation syntax is very simple as comparison to property binding implementation. That is why it is included in Angular framework. Let me show you the code of property binding now. See, here is the string interpolation code. Now let me place the property binding code here. Here it is. Both are same things. I mean both are doing same things. But the first one seems simpler than the second line, right? That is why for string case, which is majority or I can say 80% of the case is string case only. So that's why we use string interpolation in case of string data binding. But sometimes we have to transfer the Boolean value from component to HTML view, which is not possible by interpolation but can be done by property binding. For example, let's put a text box here like this. Now this text box is disabled, can be true or false based on the value received from the component code. We cannot do interpolation code for this is disabled, but we can do this with the help of property binding. Now let me go to the component code and put this is disabled equal to true. Now the template error is gone. See, now we will check the browser and see the text box is disabled here, which is disabled with the help of the property binding. So this is the example of property binding in Angular. I hope you are now you understand when to use interpolation and when to use property binding. If you have any queries about this question, please ask me in the comment section. Here is a very important interview question in Angular. What is two-way data binding in Angular? If you know this binding, that means you know all the bindings. That's why interviewers ask this question as much as possible. By the end of this video, you will be able to explain two-way data binding to anyone. See, here is the flow. User will input data in some text box or input field in HTML template like this. The data will be passed to component file and then updated data will be passed back to this div or HTML view at the same time. So the definition is two-way data binding in Angular will help users to exchange data from the view to component and then from component to view at the same time. This is the code format for it. First square brackets and then round brackets and then inside it ng model. Shortly I will give you the reason behind this syntax. Some people will call it banana inside the box also, but personally I don't like that. Anyway, it's up to you to remember it the way you like it. It may be square brackets and then round brackets, or you can say banana inside the box. Now let me show you the code of this two-way binding. This is the code of previous bindings: string interpolation, property binding, and event binding. The code of two-way binding is like this: input ng model inside the round brackets, then square brackets, then property name is name here, and then type equal to test. The reason for this syntax is square brackets represent property binding and round bracket represent event binding. So in a way, this two-way binding is the combination of property binding and event binding. So this is the reason behind the syntax. Now right now we are seeing two errors here. One is not accepting this ng model, and second, this name property is not defined in component file. To resolve the first error, we have to include form modules in the app module.ts file. Like this, add form modules in the imports. This will automatically import the header for this. Now if you see the template file, the first error is gone. Now for the second error, let's define the name in the component file. Go to the component file and set the property name with the value interview. So it's like this. Now go back to the HTML file. Now no error is here. So here we are able to type any text inside this input control, but at the same time we have to display that in the view also, in the HTML also. For that we will place a div here and put the name property inside the string interpolation. So that's it from the two-way data binding, and now let's see the output in the browser. See, here I am writing something inside the input field, and that is parallelly reflecting here in the div. So this is the two-way data binding technique. We are inputting something and parallelly it is reflecting in the output also. With this we covered all the types of data binding. If you have any queries about this question, then please post in the comment section. Explain services with example. Suppose in our single page application we have two components. One is login component and another one is menu component. Now if any error will occur in these components, then developer have to log that error, right? For that we will have to write some lines of error logging code inside both of these components. So you see, the same code of error logging will be at two places. And if we have 100 components in our application, then we have to place that code in 100 places. So now in order to avoid that repeated lines of codes, we will create a single service which will be like error logging service, and then we will put that common code inside this file only. And then we will inject this service in both of these components. And finally, this error logging code is no more required. That's it. So the simplest answer is, a service is a TypeScript class and a reusable code which can be used in multiple components. And service can be implemented with the help of dependency injection. Therefore, in short, services are used for reusability purpose. The above example is of code reusability, but if you have some user data or any kind of data, then also you can create a common or centralized user data service and then remove the direct user data code from the components. So this is the second benefit of service. This is the answer of this question. In next question, we will see how to create the service and then how to inject it into the components. Hi friends, just a small notification here. This video is part of my full course Top 100 Angular Interview Questions, including topics like observable, TypeScript, Angular forms, etc. All questions PDF book link is also present below in the description. So like these candidates who cracked the interviews and got the offers via this course. And if you don't want to miss anything for your interviews, then you can try this course. Otherwise, no problem. Let's continue. How to create service in Angular? The answer is simple. Open terminal and write command ng generate service and then service name logging. This will create the service in your Angular application. Let me show you the practical now. In your project, under source folder, first create a common folder. Name it services or shared or anything where you can keep all your services. Then open terminal, go inside the folder services, type cd services, press enter, write command ng generate service logging and press enter. This will create a service with name logging.service.ts inside the service folder. Here for now, ignore this @injectable. This is introduced in Angular 8 and I will explain its use in an upcoming question. Now here inside the service, we will put our common error logging code, which will be then distributed to all the components. Now how to use this service in components? Suppose we have two components, login component and menu component, and here inside the constructor we have the same error logging code. Why I put that inside the constructor? Because constructor will be automatically invoked in the component, but yes, you can place this code anywhere else also. Now let's put these login and menu component inside the app.module and then bootstrap it along with the app module. Now if you run the application in browser, you can see the app component, login component and the menu component on the page. And if I inspect the console, then here you can see the error logging statement from the constructor. Now we will go back to the code and remove the error logging from the component and put it inside the service method which will accessed by the components. Now we have to use service here in the login components. For that, one way is to create the instance of logging service class and then call the method like this. This will do the job, and if you see the browser, then you are now getting the error logging statements again from the logging service. But this is a wrong way to use the service. Why? Because in this case, if you are unit testing your components independently, then you have to include these services also for the unit testing. But you use dependency injection, then you can unit test these components independently from the services. This is one benefit. There are some more benefits also which are related with interfaces and class, and which will be beneficial if your Angular application is very big in future. For now, you just remember we will always use dependency injection for injecting the service inside the components. In next question, I will explain how this dependency injections works. Here is the question. What is input decorator? How to transfer data from parent component to child component? The answer is very simple. Input decorator is used to pass data from parent component to child component. Now let me show you a real-time practical example of its use. Here you can see how the data is entering into the input field of the parent component, and the same data will be parallelly updated in the child component. You can remember something after watching this, and that is two-way data binding. If you know two-way data binding, that is great. If you don't worry. Just see my previous videos and you will get an understanding what is two-way data binding. Now here is the final flow. Here we have our app component as parent component, and then we have the child component. Here we will enter the data inside the input of the app.component.html file, which will be then passed and written back from the app.component.ts file, and that will happen with the help of this two-way data binding. Then This data will send from the parent component to the child component, and child component will receive it with the help of this input decorator. And finally, child component will send the property data to child component HTML view with the help of string interpolation, because string interpolation can send data from the component to the view. So this is the whole idea. Now let's do the same thing in the code. We know that if we put selector of this child component here inside the app component, then this will set a parent-child relationship between these two components, right? Now first we have to input the data in the parent component HTML file. For that we will use the two-way data binding like this. This will send the data to the parent component TypeScript file, and then at same time it will return immediately the same data in this text input property only. Now we have some errors here. First is ng model is not defined. For that we have to go to app module and then include forms module inside the imports, because ng model directive is a part of forms module only. So that is the required thing. Then to resolve the second error, which is txt input does not exist, we have to create this property txt input inside the parent component text TypeScript file like this. So all two-way binding is set. Now we have to send data txt input from the app component.html file to the child component TypeScript file, and we will use property binding for this. See, this app child is the selector of the child component, right? And through it only will send the data like this. This message from parent property should be a property in the child component. That's why it is showing the error here. Now let's create this property in the child component. But this property right now is not capable of receiving any data from any other component, right? So to make it capable of receiving the data from other components, we will use this input decorator like this. So this is the thing, this is the job of the input decorator, to make a normal property and convert it into a property which can receive the data from outside components. That is the job of input decorator. In that way, Angular framework will know that this property can receive data from the parent components. Also, we have to import the input also like this for this input decorator, otherwise this will show the error. Now as the last step, we have to pass this received property value to the browser or to the HTML view, right? For that we will go to the HTML view, and here we will use string interpolation like this, which will transfer data from the child component to the child view. That's it. All the things are now in sync. Now let me show you the output in the browser. See, whatever I am typing in the parent component is reflecting in the child component. So this is the whole story, and this is the role of that input decorator also, and the answer of this question. If you have any queries, ask me in the comment section and I will be very happy to answer it. Here is the question. What is at output decorator and event emitter? The answer is simple. At output decorator and event emitter together are used to pass data from child component to parent component. Let me show you a practical and real-time use of it. Here is our parent component, and inside that there is a child component. Now whatever I am typing inside the input of child component, that is reflecting here in the parent component. This is possible with the help of output decorator and event emitter only. Before diving in the code, let me show you the flow. Here we have two components, parent and child. Now first user will enter some text inside the child component HTML file, right? That text will be transferred to child component TypeScript file via event binding. If you don't know event binding, Don't worry, you can watch my previous videos, or you can just think that event binding is used to transfer data from component HTML file to component TypeScript file. That's it. Then the next step is this child component TypeScript file will emit the event, or you can say inform the parent component that here I am sending something with the help of @output decorator and event emitter. So this is the second step. And then this app component HTML will again send the data via event binding to TypeScript file, and then finally display the data in the parent app component HTML file via interpolation. So here finally this is a 3-step process. 1, 2 and 3. Now let's see how to code this. First step is to configure the HTML file to send the event binding code like this. Here input is a event, as whatever text we will enter in input text should immediately go to the parent component, right? Now on this event we will call this function of child TypeScript file send message to parent. Here $event is the event itself, meaning in TypeScript file via this $event you can extract whatever you have entered in the input text here. So this is the purpose of $event, to pass the data to the TypeScript file. Now this is showing error because this method is yet not created in the TypeScript file, right? So let's go to the TypeScript file and create it. Here in this method with the here in the method we have received the event like this. This is the first step. Now the second step is to send this data from the child component to parent component file. For that we will use the instance of event emitter and will import the event emitter at top like this. Now the question is, what is event emitter? It is basically to use emit events only. Yeah, I know it's a silly answer, but this is the answer only. So emit events means discharge the events to other components, and that is the purpose of event emitter, to discharge the event to other components again. So this is used with @output decorator to send the event to the parent component. So okay, event emitter will discharge the component to the other components, and @output decorator will discharge it to specifically to the parent component. So that is, and to make it work, let's import output also. Now this is all configuration is done. Now how the event will be sent? So when this send message to parent is called from the child HTML view, then this send a message emitter will emit the event like this. Here we will extract the text from the $event as I said earlier and send as parameter like this. So the second step is done. Now we have emitted the event. Now as the final step we have to receive the event message in the parent component. So we will go to the parent component and we will take the help of event binding here like this. Then send this received event to the TypeScript file with the help of this function receive message. So we have received something here from the child component and we are sending it to the TypeScript file now with the help of event binding. So go to TypeScript file, create this function, create a property also message from child, and then set the property to the message received from the child HTML view. Okay, like this. And final, after setting, go to the child HTML view and just use interpolation to display the value of the message. So this is the property we just created, message from child, and in order to transfer this from the component to the HTML, we have used this interpolation. That's it. All the 3 steps are done and the application is already in running mode. So let's go to the browser and test the changes. See, inputting here in the child component and it is going to parent component as expected. So this is the answer of this question. Now you know how to transfer data from child component to parent component. And if you have any queries, then ask me in the comment section and I will be very happy to answer them. Here is a differences question, and differences questions are the favorites of interviewers because with this they can check two concepts with a single question. Now the question is, what is the difference between constructor and ng on init? Let's start with the definition of ng on init. ng on init is an Angular lifecycle hook which signals the activation of the created component. Remember, it's an Angular lifecycle hook, and when this is called, when the component is already created. On the other hand, the constructor is a method in a TypeScript class that automatically gets called when the class is being instantiated. Meaning, constructor is not a part of the Angular lifecycle hook. It's a part of the TypeScript class. And Angular framework and TypeScript class are two different things. TypeScript can be used in other frameworks also apart from Angular framework. Right now Angular framework is using TypeScript class, but although they are two different things. Second difference is ng on init is called after ng on changes lifecycle hook, whereas constructor is called before any lifecycle hook. The first lifecycle hook is ng on changes, but the constructor will be called even before that. So when constructor will be called, the component is not yet created or not yet ready. Now the most important difference is when to use ng on init and when to use constructor. This can be a separate question and it's a very important question. When to use what for coding? When ng on init will be called, everything about the component is already ready, or you can say it is already created. So developer use it to perform most of the business logic on component, and that code will be written inside this ng on init method. Lifecycle hook. Because if you will perform operation when things are not ready, for example, if you will perform business logic before the ng on init, then many a times application can break because the component is still not ready. Let me give you a comparison here. Suppose in real, the humans, if you put education or job stress in a newborn baby, then what will happen? Then things will not go as per the expectation because many things like the brain, the body, the physical, that are not ready, still not ready in the human babies or the human child. So there is a time. Similarly, in component lifecycle also, the ng on init hook meaning is the component is mature now and we can do operation here. Before that, it can be too risky. Similarly, when constructor called, when we will call the constructor or the application started, then constructor is called, everything in component is not ready. Only some things like component is still in the development phase. It is still not created or not developed. So at that point, mostly we used for just injecting the dependencies only. So this is one very important thing which we do inside the constructor, and that is injecting dependencies. Apart from this, we can declare variables, instantiate some classes, but not more than that. Very limited code should be placed inside the constructor. Because why we inject dependencies in constructor? Because dependencies do not have to do anything with the component maturity. It is not related whether your component is created or not created. That's why inject dependencies in the constructor. I hope now the differences are pretty clear to you and you can explain these same differences in the front of the interviewer easily. If you have any queries, then please ask me in the comment section. Here is a very important and basic question in Angular. What is routing and how to set up routing in Angular? Whether it is Angular, .NET, React, Java or any other web technology, everywhere routing is same. Routing helps in navigating from one view to another view with the help of the URL. Let me show you what we will achieve with the help of routing. See, here we have two component links, component 1 and component 2 in app component. Now when I click component 1 link, then the URL is updated to component 1 and the component displayed will be component 1 only. Then when I click component 2, the URL is updated to component 2 and the component displayed is component 2. So in a single page application, we are navigating from one component to another component, and that is only what is called routing. Now in order to set up routing in code, we have to do this 4 steps. Create Angular project with routing option. This is the first step. Then creating components for routing. Then configure routes, and at last configure links. Now we will see how to follow these steps in code and enable routing in an Angular application. First step is create Angular project with routing option. For that, open the terminal, write command ng new routing demo, which is the project name, and press enter. This will create a new Angular project. Here it will ask now, would you like to add Angular routing? And you have to press Y, which means yes, and press enter. Now Angular will automatically create some boilerplate code for routing, meaning some template code for routing. Let me show you the things which automatically created for you. First is this file, app-routing.module.ts. Here you can configure the routes, meaning you can set that if we have component 1 in the URL string, then which component it is going to show. The second thing is router outlet at the end of app.root.html file. This indicates that in the single page application, the components will be placed at this position. So whenever we are switching between two components, then those components, the place of this component will be decided by this router outlet tag only. Now the second step is create components for routing. So this is the second step for setting up the routing. For that we will create component 1 and component 2, and I already created them. Here you can see in my tool that we have two components here. Now this is the second step and the very short one. Now the next and the third step is to configure the route in app.routing.ts file. This is a very critical step, and for this just place this code here. This code means if we have component 1 in URL string, then it will redirect to component 1 component, and same is applicable for component 2. Now if I go to the browser and if I type component 1 in the URL link and I will press enter, then it will show component 1. And if I type component 2 in URL, then it will show component 2. Now the end user is obviously not going to type the links like this. So we have to give some links here in this page, in this single page application, right? For that, this is the fourth and the final step, which is configure links. Now go back to the code, go to the app.component.html file and put a nav and two links here inside the app.component.html file. Here component 1 will be set the component 1 in the URL, and if I click component 2, then it will set component 2 in the URL. Now all set, all the 4 settings are done. Now let's go to the browser again and see we have the links as expected. Now if I click component 1 link, then URL is updated to component 1, and here we can see the content of component 1 with the help of router outlet only. And if I will click this component 2 link, the same thing will happen. The URL will be updated to component 2, and the component here is displayed is the content of the component 2 only. Alright, this is all about this question. We have covered the basics of routing here. And if you have any queries, then please ask me in the comment section. Again, a very short and simple question on router. What is router link in Angular? And here you can see the router link inside the hyperlink, right? So the very short and simple answer is router link is used for navigating to a different route, or you can say to display different component. Why I include these kind of questions? Because sometimes we know the whole concept, but we forgot these kind of small but important questions and things about the concept. So it's important to remember them from interview point of view. So this is the short and simple answer. Let's move ahead. Here is a quick question. What is the role of HTTP client in Angular? You know we can create our own services in Angular, right? And then we can use those services in our project. Similarly, Angular framework also provides some built-in services which you can also use in your project. So, HTTP client is a built-in service class available in Angular. HTTP client service is present inside this package. And now the most important thing, what this service does. Very simple, this perform HTTP request. Now here are the methods this service used for getting and posting data from the web API. But we are not going into the detail of all of these methods. We will only use get method here because it is used for observables to get the data. It will be used with observables to get the data. In the upcoming question, we will see what are the steps included in getting the data with the help of HTTP client and observables. If you have any queries about this question, then please post in the comment section. Alright, congratulations for completing all the questions. If you have reached here, that means you have the courage and patience required for cracking the interviews. Just don't stop here and keep rolling until you get your goal. Okay, only one recommendation from my side. If you have not started yet, then start giving interviews. As I always said, interviews are the best form of learning. Interviews help you not just in learning, but if you are selected, the reward is very good. Okay, and if you are not selected, then remember, you will still lose nothing. Not giving interviews is even worse than facing rejections in interviews, because not attending the exam means the opportunity is gone. Companies will hire someone else, they will not wait for you. Okay, but if you are rejected in interview, then at least you will learn new things and next time you are more prepared, right? So start giving interviews and do accept my never give up challenge until you crack the interview. Okay, accept the challenge now by writing never give up in the comment section. Finally, all the best from my side, and I will support you in your career journey by posting the interviews, careers, and the job videos continuously. Join my interview cracking community by pressing the like and subscribe button. Thank you so much.